What am I to do when the day is through?
Michael, I was so excited when Ryan popped up on our schedule because I mean he's a great guy, he's accomplished. I knew he'd be smart, but really, it's the connection to Wizard of Ads. You and I went to the Wizard of Ads camp back in I think 2005, and to be able to talk about that process again and get into that again, it was a delight.
It was, and I went kicking and screaming, if I recall,
You did,
and didn't want to go because it was
you
like the
did.
Wizards of Ads. It sounds so cheesy and horrible
Yes.
to have some guy wearing a wizard hat telling me how to write ads.
Oh my gosh.
But it wasn't that. It was so much more. And his fundamental approach to storytelling before storytelling was cool, way before everybody's talking about it now, but he was doing this 20 plus years ago, and how he builds a campaign and how he connects with the consumer, the emotional connection, which is what we talk about a lot with branding. And so yeah, it was very powerful. And Ryan was a great representative of that. Plus, he's got a really cool, mellow demeanor. I felt like I was
Sounds so good. I could listen to him talk all day.
like, yeah, I'm just really cool and laid back kind of guy. And yeah, it was perfect. So it was definitely a nice chat and learned a lot from him. And I think everybody can benefit from some of that approach, whether you're doing it yourself or just buying into the process.
For sure.
And
I say, welcome, Ryan.
all right, we got to work on that. It's still weird.
Hi, Ryan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. How are you?
I am well. Michael accuses me of being jarring and
Very.
startling. So I thought that would be a soothing tone to get us started.
I feel very relaxed. Is it like the jar was already opened? Like we
There
didn't
we go.
didn't
Yeah.
have to didn't have to hit the bottom of it or anything. Yeah.
No, we're just going to start off nice and smooth.
Yeah.
Michael, is that better?
It was. And no, it's just
Okay.
sometimes there's not a lot of lead in, and because we like to kind of, there's not a lot of green room talk. We like to kind of figure things out as we go. Because a lot of times early on, we would have these like all of a sudden we're 20 minutes talking and we haven't recorded anything, and then we're like, okay, we got to go back and do all that again. So it's like
You
you
should
want
say all that cool
fresh.
stuff again. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
I like it.
So,
But
Ryan, I think we should start with the Wizard of Oz because Michael and I had the great privilege of heading down to the ranch in Austin back in
early,
2005.
like yeah, it was very transformative for me as a writer. We went
Yeah.
there on kind of a lark, and it was like, oh, let's go
It's
see this
not a
stuff.
lark. I had read Roy's books. I think Roy is brilliant, and I
Okay, I
conned you
went.
into a road trip to
Yes,
Austin.
she conned me because like there's always something kind of thing that we're going to, and Jackie reads tons. I mean, her book collection is ridiculous, and read every marketing book, every person, everything out there. So she convinced me to go there, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and really it changed the way because I was just coming really a few years removed from college, and I had a knack for writing. I was a graphic designer by trade, but I always was good at writing advertising, writing, like
Hmm.
headlines, things like that.
Yeah.
And but I came away from there. It changed the way I conceptually thought of things and how I approach things.
Yeah.
And it was just, yeah, like I said, it was a huge, I owe a lot to that one little session, just because it was like, okay, let me think of it this way. And everything kind of flowed from that. So it was just really transformative, I think.
That's wonderful. There's three sessions now that I'd encourage you to go back and see because things have dramatically changed since 2005, 6, when the tower would have just been built, a
It
16th
was.
century Spanish tower, and now the what used to be the office is now a full-fledged whiskey vault with over 4,000 bottles of the finest whiskey in the world. There is a whiskey marketing school where you can become a whiskey sommelier, the only place in the world that you can actually get certified as a whiskey sommelier,
Oh,
all
nice.
all to teach people on how to tell stories.
Hmm.
And the actual class itself has deepened and enriched with time and with new fresh examples. The other two classes, so Magical Worlds was the class that you would have likely gone to. Then there was now Portals in the 12 Languages, which is my favorite class by bar none. There's 12 ways the brain perceives information, and when you can understand the ingredients of perception, you can affect perception, right? Because we're living in the perceptual realities of our clients, not the physical realities of the universe. And the last but not least is one that Mark Fox created. He's a NASA scientist who teaches a class there called Da Vinci and the 40 Answers, and it's a way to look at business topology and the shape of problems, and the way that you can approach creatively approach something um, using devices, tools, tactics, and methods that were all defined and outlined by these two Russian scientists who created the TRIZ formula, TRIZ. Um, all kinds of really nerdy, neat stuff that has you digging deep in the brain. And it's just it was transformational for me too in 2015. I absolutely changed my trajectory with that first class and then the many classes I did afterwards, and then eventually becoming a partner in 2017.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember exactly. Now you're talking about that. I remember some of the science part of that, and haven't thought about it in a while. But I often talk about that, not knowing where it came from, and that's where it came from. But it was they talked about how information comes in the different part of the frontal lobe, and how it
Yeah.
doesn't stick, and so it'll just keep moving through. So you have to have something that's different or jarring or memorable in there in that story. And he was talking about throwing in a gorilla or something memorable and something you don't expect, you know. And I'm always trying to find ways to do that where it's like, oh, that's something that I didn't expect there, and it sticks a little longer and it's a little more memorable. But it was one story that he told me, and this was, and I remember this forever, and I use it as an example all the time. He talked about it was a Rolex ad, and it was about a guy climbing a mountain, and he went through the pain of climbing, and I mean you could feel it that his lungs were hurting, and he couldn't take one more step, and then he finally reaches to the top, and he looks over the horizon, and he realizes Rolex for the man
Right.
who has whatever, you know. And it was like, oh my God, he told this beautiful story, not once mentioned the product until the very last end, and it was like, boom, that was it. He's like, you don't have to mention the phone number 5 times. You don't have to say the company 35. You don't have to follow the rules that traditional marketing advertising tells you to do, you know? And I guess there's a need for those kind of things, but when it comes to storytelling, that's the magic, you know?
Well, the science of every art, you know, the magic in that and the science that's behind it is astounding. It's astounding to me that you remember an ad that Roy would have literally recited by voice 20 years ago in that class, and that Rolex ad sold more Rolex watches than any Rolex ad has ever sold Rolex watches in the history of the world. Um, so much so that at one point in time, Roy's small handful of clients were generating 5% of all sales of diamonds in North America.
Wow.
Um, to put that into reality, those 12 to 20 clients were selling more diamonds than the majority of the world combined elsewhere. There was no other marketing group that was selling more diamonds by multiples at that time, and it was all based on story.
That's awesome. And I kind of jumped in. Ryan, tell us a bit about your story. How did you get to where you're at today? What's your background?
I grew up transactionally. There was a retail pirate ship, the gulags of retail, as I'm slugging it out with bad bosses and friction and weaponized fear, shame, and guilt, getting whipped by shame every day, and living in this highly transactional, highly performance-based world. If I didn't sell something, I didn't eat, and I like to eat. So I figured it out. Some of it good, some of it bad, but in that you learn from bosses that are just terrible. And they're all surviving. They're not bad people. They're just doing bad things because they don't know any better. They know what their daddy taught them, and that was to be a brute and to treat it like a some sort of, you know, um, I don't know, prison work sentence. I think feels like at times in retail. I feel for people in retail. So it was just brutal, and that's what I learned. That's what I mirrored. That's what I mimicked. And in 2015, this class that I took is like, holy cow! That was the eye-opening experience I had of this doesn't need to be so transactional. This doesn't need to be such a grind, so hard, such an effort every day, so exhausting to think up a new thing and, you know, be the shiny object for the next minute until we can get that customer sold and then move on to the next one and grind it out again. And it was a relief, you know, but it was also where my trajectory changed. It was where I started just exploring not just marketing, because here's the thing I love. David Hewlett. So David Packard of Hewlett Packard. He said marketing is far too important to be left to the marketing department. And I wasn't a marketing guy coming in. I was a sales guy. I'd done lots of marketing because that's what you do when you're getting these double roles in a lot of businesses. And I came from it from this approach of the culture, the experience, and the story, which is something that Roy teaches, that Ray Sagrin, one of our other partners, Wizard of Ad partners, had taught us all about. And this culture, story, and experience is really the foundation of every single business. So I thought, hey, I can contribute to making cultures better and making it easier for sellers to sell and the buying experience, making it easier for buyers to buy. And if we have those two things, well, we can tell better stories in our marketing. And those three things together will help accelerate profitable growth. And that took a while to figure out. A little longer than I was anticipating, but here we are now, figured out, and now the solution just gets deeper and richer because not only are we writing fantastic ads, but we're looking at every aspect of marketing, including the sales experience, including the customer service experience, including the delivery and installation or production experience that the customers all receive in one form or another. And it just elevates everything, allowing the companies to just do the thing that they do best, which is grow companies and serve people.
One of the things that I think is so fascinating about what Roy has done is he's taken people who are not naturally writers like me and helped us understand, and I say Roy, the whole Wizard of Ads process, helped us understand how to be writers and storytellers, really. And
Mhm.
so when I think about what's happening right now with the noise,
Yeah.
marketing. There's so much noise. So, what does it really take for a small business now to kind of punch above its weight in today's noisy market?
Yeah, so many companies think brand story. Oh, that means I have to tell my origin story, and
Right.
all of a sudden it's just like all about me and how we do things and how we solve problems and how just and wonderful we are. That story needs to be told, yes, on your about page, sometimes in an ad, maybe an ad or two. Sometimes it has legacy, it has legs in it because you have a really crazy story to tell that just has all of these ins and outs and wonderful um, elements to it. But most of the time, it doesn't. most of the time, we have to tell a different story, right? Like a story of like the story about nothing, Seinfeld, the Big Bang Theory, Friends, all of these shows that lasted years and years and years and years and were deeply loved. It was because they had characters. And the characters were on a character arc. They developed, they changed, they evolved over time. They had story arc. Things weren't always the same. They had emotion. They had laugh, cry, and make you angry. Now, not angry at you, the company, but angry at the industry and the injustices of the world, or the sheer fact that your air conditioner is stealing your money because of, whatever, insert whatever here. Um, and then to have people laugh about that, because when they're listening to the ads, they don't need your thing, right? If we're selling Lululemon pants, we could inspire somebody to get a new pair of pants to have their butt look fabulous. I mean, that's why I buy them anyway. And at the end of you almost spit that out, Jackie. I
Almost. It was
waited.
really a spit
Yes,
take. It was so
yes, yeah.
close.
I was hoping for
I know.
anyway.
It was good timing, Ryan.
And that's the difference between an internally triggered, inspirational, emotion-driven identity purchase and a externally triggered grudge purchase like air conditioners or hot water tanks or roofs. All of these things that people don't want to spend money on, we still need to show up in a way. And that's what attracted me to the essential services predominantly, is because of the hardest thing to market.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's the
Uh,
thing that people don't want to pay
I
attention.
I I like to agree with Gus, but I'm going to disagree with you on that point. I think that it's easiest, and that's a relative term these days, but it's easier to market consumer-based services, Lululemon pants, tires, roofs, because it's something we all know and understand, and in most cases need, even the pants, because everybody wants their butt to look big,
Yeah.
better. I think it's harder
Both.
to Freudian slip. I think it's harder to market B2B services and products because they are not as well known. And there's this tendency in the B2B space to try to educate instead of entertain, to try to inform instead of persuade, to try to translate instead of entice. And so I think B2B marketing is the hardest thing to do. That's why we
That's
do it.
that's fascinating. Yeah, B2B marketing is, yeah, it is absolutely difficult because people are trying to speak to the left side of the brain
Mhm.
when what they need to realize is that the part of the brain is attached to the rest of the body. You're selling to people no matter
Right.
what, doesn't matter if they're in a procurement office or not. Getting past the gatekeepers, getting past the layers of nonsense. Yeah, I bless your hearts for doing it because it is hard work. Now we do some light B2B work. We have two folks that are specialists in the B2B space for getting attention.
Right.
Um, and a lot of it has to do with things like lumpy mail and targeted lists and a lot of the things that help you break past the gatekeepers and get on that boss's desk because she's not going to open the package, right? So while you'll spend maybe $100 on that package, you'd spend, you know, $100 trying to market yourself to a mass media thing easily. You'd pay per click. You'd spend all that money. You don't need
Right.
paper. I would argue that you don't need a massive pay per click budget if you're running a B2B campaign
Correct.
effectively to your top 100 clients.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's a struggle sometimes, and we talk a lot about bringing a B2C mentality to a B2B world, and to really kind of be authentic, speak conversationally, tell different stories. Like recently, I wrote it was a win back campaign, and it was very cute actually, and it was kind of like there was a breakup, and we want you back, and it was we missed you, and it was very emotional based. And the company, the first thing that came back with me was that's not very professional, it's not really our tone, it's not really our voice. And I'm like, what is your voice then? Like you're being a little humble right now, and it's a little self-deprecating in a way, but you're saying, hey, we you your business matters to us, and we're sad that you're gone, and we want it means something to us. And you can go back to them and say, hey, we're still here, and we're offering these new products, and we're this and we're that, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to put that in the list of, I'm going to get to it later. But if everybody
Yep.
wants to be wanted, and if you're able to be vulnerable like that and say, you know what, it matters that you're gone. We care.
Yeah.
I mean, I always go back to the Avis ads from the 80s because it's one of my favorite taglines ever, but it's like, we try harder. And I mean, that was brilliant. And it was so authentic. And so, you know what? We're smaller than everybody else. We can't compete what everybody else does. But you know what? We're going to try harder. We're going to make sure that we're in this game with you. We're in this fight. And
Yeah.
that earned huge market share for them. And now they're a player in the game
That's right.
because they were honest, and part of that is just, it's such a reality check for people to buy into that. It's hard. I get it. There's risk in that. It's like, man, I'm taking a chance with that. And like, what chance are you taking? The fact that they either ignore it or they don't think about it, but you haven't lost
What's
anything.
worse? Yeah, what's worse, Michael, is being ignored or having somebody have a reaction to it, good or bad. You're going to have bad guaranteed if you have good. I'd rather have a reaction and have somebody pick up a phone, even if it's to complain to me, uh, so that I can have a conversation. Because before that, we had nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I miss most, and our agency's evolved over the years a lot. And but early on when we had gone to see Roy and heard him talk and all that, it was we did a lot of radio, and I loved writing for radio. I still love writing for radio. We do very little of it today just because we've grown into different markets, and it's some of the clients, it's just not part of the medium that we use. But man,
Yeah.
there was a while where I loved every moment of that. You can paint these amazing stories, these great visuals. You don't need a film crew. You don't need $1 million budget, but you can paint these stories that are so remarkable. And you can really stand out in radio too, because there's so much bad radio out there. Monday,
Mhm.
Monday, Monday, and people are yelling at you. You come across with something that we did these jewelry spots, and it was all about the dad, at the football game with the mom, and they're watching their kid play, and then she reaches in her pocket and she finds a diamond ring at the end of the night, and just to tell her
Pearl
that you love
necklace.
her, pearl
It was
necklace,
a
and
pearl necklace.
yeah, but these beautiful stories we woven into that, and at the very end, it was like blank jeweler, like again, it was the total Wizard of Ads concept, By the
Yeah.
way, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to Wizard of Ads because I hated the name. I was like, oh God, this is so gimmicky. Wizard of Ads. And so if anybody does come across that and thinks it's gimmicky, it's not. Like I said, it's good stuff. And I was a believer after going. I was like, but I'm still not even sure where that name came from. But it was one of those things like,
Roy's
man,
a
I'm
wizard.
not doing that. Yeah,
Well,
it just
the
seemed
wizard
hokey.
comes the wizard comes from the roots of those words wise ard, which is the wise men, and it's based off of the three wise men. In fact, every year on Christmas Eve, Roy himself and a small group of his friends go to the academy and perform the story of Bethlehem and
Really.
the whole three wise men. Yeah, it's it's got a lot of very deep meaning. He also, this is well before Harry Potter and all these other things. The idea of glamour, of Merlin, of accidental magic and creating magic through storytelling. Um, when you think about the monk who created Merlin and King Arthur um, in the 1400s, they were literally creating magic. They were telling these fantastical stories of magic and kings and knights that never ever existed. People to this day believe that King Arthur was still a real person. So it's amazing at what you can do to manifest something, and so it has a lot of meaning, but it was also it's become one of those things where it fits into the are we in the Harry Potter universe? Are we in the Lord of the Rings universe? And
Mhm.
all the other fun things that go along with that. But
Well, there was also a Dante's Inferno thing, right? Am I wrong
uh,
with that?
not Dante's Inferno, but Don Quixote.
Don Quixote. I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yes,
yeah.
yes. I remember that. Yes, yes, yes.
Roy Don Quixote is representative in a lot of ways. Um, as the ever uh, wandering entrepreneur, the one that's always chasing the unachievable dream, chasing the anima. In this case, Dulcinea, who's his love, and he clearly has bad eyesight, and he's probably mostly insane, but he's got this pursuit that he is constantly chasing and can never achieve. So. Um, he is a huge Cervantes fan, a huge Don Quixote. He has the largest art collection of Quixote in North America and is the only non-doctorate scholar who's got a chapter in the preeminent textbook for Don Quixote. So he knows more about that than pretty much everyone. It's pretty
Nice.
amazing. Yeah. Every year, the Cervantes Association comes to the Academy and spends a week um, talking and discussing their craft.
I want to get back to process just for a second.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, because we obviously have all had the experience of Wizard of Ads and going there. What's the process like for a small business when they hire you? How does that work? How do you get to know them to be able to craft their story?
Yeah, there's two roads. In fact, just the call that we had before this was exactly that. And one is that they come to the academy and we spend a day showing them what Wizard Academy is and what Wizard of Ads is, because it's so absolutely astoundingly different than anything that you've ever experienced at a university or in, any kind of marketing forum that you've been at. The other is that for those folks who generally know who we are and have seen our reputation and our astounding track record, they end up jumping in, and we do three big things to start. One is we identify what the unleveraged and leveraged assets that we have available to us are for that client. And this is in juxtaposition to their competition, what's true about their culture and their company, and what it is that they can deliver on that other people wouldn't be willing to stick up their hand and say, me too. Because everyone's going to say the table stakes stuff, even if it's not true. We have to figure out how to pull out something that is genuinely unique. In those situations that there isn't, then we have to paint a genuinely unique picture. The second thing that we're going to do is that creative uncovery of really just digging out the stories, the experiences, the values, the beliefs, the things that the hills they die on, and forming those creative character diamonds, which is something you guys would have spent a little bit of time on back then, I suspect. That David Freeman had developed for the screenwriting folks. And then we get into the persuasion architecture and how we're going to set it up to speak to people. The golden rule, as we know, is do unto others as we want to be done unto. The platinum rule is do unto others as others want to be done unto. So treat people the way they want to be treated, not the way we would want to have ourselves treated,
Right.
is fundamentally the difference. Why does that matter? Well, because about half the planet wants to pick up the phone and call you for an appointment. The other half of the planet wants to fill out a form online. So let's surf both of those masters to speak to the most amount of people. How do we talk transactionally and relationally? How do we bring in both to satisfy their needs? There's all kinds of ways that we can do that. Once we get the creative right, we can start layering in additional pieces of creative afterwards. But the last piece that's most challenging for most is getting the mass media purchased right. And Roy actually back then, he would have been writing courses for companies like Comcast, iHeart, a lot of these big companies on exactly how to buy and sell radio, TV, billboards, with full sales training decks, built based off of neuroscience, not off of the way people want to sell stuff. And a lot of those companies use them. Some of them are still using them today. Others have decided that they're smarter and have felt the effects of how smart they are.
Well said.
Right. We're blessed to buy an awful lot of media, enough that gives us a national buying power and the ability to get absolutely stunning rates, but with the correct frequency. Because when we don't have frequency, we don't have the ability to get back in that long-term chemical memory. The second part of it is that creative. If we don't have a high impact message that shows up with repetition, we also don't get back in that long-term memory. And that's our secret sauce, really. You pair that up with great strategy, and these are long-term brand building, compounding effect type of campaigns. So a lot of it's strategy, a lot of it's talking. Then there's a whole bunch of silly, goofy, funny, quirky, creative stuff. And then there's nuts and bolts media buying to make sure that they're getting just killer deals.
Right.
And that combination is second to none.
How have you adjusted for digital and social? You know, the way that you write for TV and the way that you write for radio, I'm sure that storytelling still applies, but the frequency has to increase because you got to put out so much more. The size has changed. You don't have a big TV screen, you got a little bitty digital space. So how have you adjusted for the challenges of the evolution of media?
I was thinking the same thing because I mean, from the 20 plus years since we've been there and experienced you guys, obviously the world's changed dramatically. I mean, having you there, for example, probably bringing a new talent, new blood, new attitudes, but you've had to evolve and change. I mean, obviously the core is still there fundamentally, but the world has dramatically changed.
Yeah, it has. And that affects obviously strategy and the leveraged assets. Here's what doesn't change. And I think that's what a lot of folks need to kind of pay attention to, because channels will always change. The TV used to be on a cathode tube, a 13-inch, and then a big screen was a big box, and now it's a flat screen, and now it's a little tiny screen that we're looking on our phone. Well, they're all screens. Right. So if we can say something that's worth listening to, then that's number one. That didn't change. Right. So great messaging is not going to change. Making people feel that is not going to change. So the biology and that is the psychology that is derived from the biology and neuroscience hasn't changed, and that's valuable for us. People still want low prices. They still want lots of selection. They still want to have an astoundingly easy and fast solution to their needs. Jeff Bezos reflects on that exact thing with Amazon. So what do? We pay attention to what data tells us today, and the data is very true to what we've been doing all along. If we don't have a powerful initial visceral emotional moment in the first 3 to 5 seconds of the ad, which by the way, David Ogilvy said 75 years ago, right? When he said, you've done 80% of your job when you've written your headline right, right? Um, this hasn't changed. People have distractions in their life. We have to get the headline right. What's the headline in a radio ad or a social media post where there's a quirky little thing going on? Well, it's the thing that you say first. It's also the visual payoff that you produce first. You need to be promising a future payoff. You need to create that environment of all the things that we know to be true today that people love to talk about in hooks and all the different types of hooks you can do. And there's, if anything, it's a wonderful example of the ways that you can get people paying attention better to storytelling, right? The hook has not changed in 10,000 years. It will never change. Um, the channels change, right? What used to be the Yellow Pages is now Google. What is now Google will probably be ChatGPT search and Perplexity search and all these other things as we evolve forward. It'll go from typing things out to voicing things out. A lot of these things, the evolutions become much more integrated, seamless, and intuitive, but showing up is still showing up. Still well over 50% of every market in America, top 200 markets in America, listens to the radio. Well over 50%. TV channels are changing. So instead of us buying it from the broadcaster, which we may still do depending on the play, we also might buy a mix of OTT and then streaming. So we're looking at what is that perfect mix, but that all comes second to the message. If we don't have the right message to punch with, it doesn't matter what channel you buy, you're just spending money and failing, right? Or you're getting name recognition without brand recognition. The delineation for me being people might know your name when they know your brand. They have a feeling about your brand. You're making people feel when it's a brand. Anything prior to that is just an exercise in aesthetic and sound
Or noise, just more noise.
Beautiful, you beautifully said, Michael. That visual, that auditory, that noise that just disappears in the background as white noise in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and I find this. I think at times I'm always pushing my team to push beyond that, because I think I say this a lot, especially with AI and things like that. I think we're living in kind of an age of mediocrity right now because there's so much content being pushed out there because it's so easy to do. You can
Yeah.
go in there and say, write me 5 emails or write me this or write me that. And yes, it will do it and it will sound okay. But
Mhm.
okay is not going to get you there. It's just, again, more noise, more distraction, more things. When you can find something that cuts through and really is purposeful, even the smallest of things, I mean, you can have big wins with that, but you have to really fight for it now. I think it's harder than ever.
It is, and there's missing points along the way. It's, for example, writing an ad or even a little social post or a story that's being told on socials where they talk about the post and they talk about the story, but the associated brand gets forgotten, right? They're standing around the water cooler the next day and saying, "Did you see the thing with the penguins and the kangaroos and stuff? Oh, that's great. Yeah. Who was that for?" Or what? It's like, I don't know, but it was like really good kangaroos and, penguins, like penguin did a crazy thing. You just failed the advertiser, the person who's paying the money for these ads because they didn't get remembered. And that's super important, right? If you're, paying for this stuff in a meaningful way.
Well, I always love when too, and Jackie used this example, it's a long time ago and it still resonates today. It still resonates today. Like somebody will come in and say, where did you hear about us? And I'll say, oh, I heard your radio spot. Well, we weren't running any radio spots. Okay, and whatever. I think that's always a win because even with all the tracking we have nowadays, if something sticks, it sticks, and you don't
Yeah.
always know where it came from or why, but somehow it resonates. Somehow it sticks with you, and somehow you're drawn to that product or service. And when it comes up, you're like, yeah, well, I heard about you here. You're like,
Yeah.
no, we didn't do that. So, but I'm glad you still heard about us. I think that's a win due to messaging.
My favorite, and Ryan, I don't know if
Absolutely.
you have your dealer clients do this, but we used to do a lot of automotive dealer work, and we would have the sales team ask, where'd you hear about us?
Yeah.
And the service bay guys would record what radio station the car was actually set on, or was it on Bluetooth or a podcast? What was the car actually set to when it came in for service? It was just part of their 26-point checklist. That's one of the points.
Nice.
So to have the people who bought the cars tell us they always listen to NPR, but the car comes in for service and it's set to a rap station. I'm like, okay, who you're pretending to be and who you actually are is not the same. And so
That's
it
right.
helped us, though, do a better job of buying based on actual habits and not who they want people to think they are. So it was a fun little thing we used to do.
Well, one of the things that they discovered about predominantly Spanish-speaking radio was that Spanish speakers, first language, or mother tongue, would always say the Spanish station, but rarely listen to them at Spanish station. They just wanted to show their solidarity and pride of what they
Right.
listened to, when in reality they were listening to all of the non-Spanish speaking stations.
Right.
And not because they're bad people. Again, it was just because they did have a pride and a solidarity to their community. But what it did was really throw the metrics off of, whether or not they actually were getting it. This is back in diary markets before personal people meters were a thing. And it, it's funny how the things do show up. When I was in Scotland, gosh, 10 years ago, we had mailers that were supposed to go out to 5,000 people. And we were calling that list to say, hey, did you get our mailer? Well, um, we found out the mailers weren't going to go and just weren't going to make it. They're coming in from Canada and just didn't land. So we said, nope, we're sticking to the same script because it doesn't matter. We said, hey, did you get the mailer? 23% of the people said, yep, we got the mailer. Okay. Right. We did the same study with a client, Benjamin Franklin, the punctual plumber. Roy invented that brand, and the very first brand franchise that was ever out. The only thing they ran for an entire year, no Google, no pay per click, no yellow page ad, no nothing. The literally only thing that ran before the company even opened was a radio campaign. And again, back in the good old days when everyone's asking, where'd you hear from us? The radio came in at 4%. Every other possible medium was something else. And you realize this data is the worst possible data that you can collect. And not only that, it's a little bit rude to ask when you think about it. If someone's got a broken car or a water squirting out on their floor right now, like, oh, I'm just going to interrupt your problem and check to see, what my marketing solution might be, which radio station were you listening to? It's kind of funny to see it. I know that it doesn't often happen anymore, but there are still marketing companies out there, and the digital side who are trying to justify you. Where'd you hear from us? Well, the place that they're going to answer always highest percentage of time for residential home service is going to be Google, which is perfect solution for the digital agency who's trying to justify their existence. Right. See, it works. See, everyone says they get it from Google. No, that's just the last touch.
Right.
You're a maroon. Don't believe what you're seeing, because for 5 years now they've been seeing your ads and listening to your podcasts and doing this and doing that and truck wraps and billboards and all this stuff. They might have even had you as a provider before. All of that informed whether or not they'd used you again, right? So to allocate it to the last touch is serving one master only, and it's not the right one.
Right. No, absolutely.
And it's harder and harder now too. I mean, because everybody wants to just lean on social media so much, and social media is great. I mean, it's open the conversation. It's a two-way conversation with the consumer. They're allowed to participate. I think harder and harder to get people to spend money too. It's like, well, we're putting all of our eggs in this basket. Yeah, but you're still not spending money there. And so you're hoping that it will just organically happen, without any leverage, and I think there's still a need for that to happen as well, to actually plan out a media buy through that if you're going to go all social media. What is
Yeah.
how do you get the message? Because you can preach to the choir all day long, and that's great. But how do you get other converts? How do you get out of
Yeah.
that bubble? You have to be able to expand your messaging.
Yeah. Well, this is it. And, Jackie, you mentioned earlier, reach and frequency. It wasn't until 2025 where you had the ability to affect frequency on Meta and Meta only. Um, Predominantly, people were saying, oh, let's just get out there and do a lot of impression. Well, impression is nonsense. Um, Most of that data is fundamentally wrong. Bob Hoffman, a significant researcher in the marketing space, showed us that up to 64% of the traffic that you're seeing on the internet is completely and utterly false bots or complete and 100% unadulterated organized crime corruption, right? Like, because it's billions of dollars being spent by these small businesses that are literally being robbed blind by the providers that are supposedly running auctions where they're both the seller and the auctioneer.
Right.
That is utter nonsense to get trapped in that. And to rely 100% or 60 or 70 or 80% of your budget on these efforts and then do a little bit of community work and think that you've got a brand that somebody cares about. Well, the reality of it is you need to talk to an awful lot of people awfully frequently to have them just remember that you matter. Apple to this day spends 7% of their marketing on marketing, not because they need more new customers, but because they need to retain the ones they've got.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. No, absolutely. Ryan, when you think about marketing in sense, whether it's something your team have created or something someone else has done, what do you think's the best, like the best marketing campaign? I mean, Michael talked earlier about Avis, and that's a big one he goes back to, and the diamonds, Rolex. What's yours?
Mm.
What's the one that you're like, oh, I wish I had created that. That was brilliant.
Oof. Well, I immediately think of the ones that we did create and I was blessed to be a part of. Um, when I think of some of the most powerful campaigns out there, I think of the ones that Roy demonstrates for us. 1-800-GOT-JUNK has
Mm,
become one of the most powerful campaigns in the marketplace. Uh, just point and it disappears, right? And the whole sentiment of the client just gleefully dancing around the house and pointing at things as things disappear all the time, and uh, the pure joy that that brings to her, and what that did for an actual result. Because ultimately, again, I think it all comes back to we do actually have to see a result, and ultimately that's what matters most. Well, Brian Scudamore was able to take $100 million business and drive it to $1 billion by doing extraordinary things, leveraging the marketing message. So, um, for a man who's a billionaire to be on the TV commercial still is a pretty remarkable thing.
for sure.
Uh, and he's that guy. He's just a humble, decent, um, legitimately authentic human being. And that's, I think, what really makes marketing work is the operators who have the courage to be vulnerable, because vulnerability is the price you pay for intimacy. And that intimacy is what gets you those new customers and those ongoing relational repeat buyers.
Ryan, that's kind of brilliant, not just for marketing, but for mindset of life. Will you say that again? Because I want to make sure the people who've stuck around to the end of this hour together hear you, because that says it all just about marketing, but about humans.
Yeah, I grew up transactional. So recognizing how valuable relational branding is, it's equally true in life. When we're relational with our coworkers, with our families, with our customers, we're going to get long-term repeat customers. We're going to get loyalty when we treat them like a person that wants to be around us, right? And they feel like we want them around, not just to give us money, right? They're not our piggy bank. Then they stick around and they sing your praises. Heck, you're going to have people that'll never use you and will refer you to their friends when people ask, who should I use to pick up my junk? Oh, you got to get to 1-800-GOT-JUNK, guys. You just point and it disappears. Like, what? It's like,
It,
where'd that come from? it's amazing at the power that you have there. Leveraging relationship is literally everything, but not just in your customer experience, in your employee experience, because it's the multiplier effect, right? You're the owner of a business. Cool. You're not talking to every single customer personally. Your people are. So
Right.
treat them the way you want them to treat your customers and set your intention right, right? Just like commander's intent, you need to give them the flexibility over the control to represent you the way that you know is going to serve people at the highest level.
Right. No,
I think,
absolutely.
and we talk about that a lot is, ownership of the brand. I mean, I think you don't own your brand. The consumer owns the brand. The people that use your brand, they're going to decide if they like you or not. They're going to decide how they're going to talk about you and all those different things. You can help motivate those things, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that are really going to drive that train. And
Yeah,
you want to share that ownership, of them saying, this is mine. This
yeah.
product is mine because I like it. Like I hate to say it, it's these I don't even know how to pronounce it. Tajin, tahine.
Tahini.
I found those in a store in an airport, and I'm like, can't find them unless I go to an airport. Now it seems to be there all over the place. But I'm like, that's my thing, and I have it on my desk right here. So I'm thinking about it. But why do we buy a certain peanut butter or a milk or a product? Sometimes it's because it's good, but it's like it says something about who I am too. This is representative of me. It's like if we wore a vest with badges of all the things that represent us. And I'm a Macintosh, I'm an Apple guy, I'm a this guy, I'm a whatever. And you want to share that with the world. You want to be the
Yeah,
one that spreads the good news. Oh, I
right.
have a guy. Oh, I know. You get to be the guy for that moment to share that TV show, that moment that you experienced, and you want other people to experience it with you. When you get to that level, that's the goal, right? I mean, that we all want that.
Well, two things out of that, Michael, and you're dead on 100% right in every single way. The number one God of motivations, right? The thing that supersedes all other motivations is identity. Everything that we do externally and internally, positive or negative, is oriented towards feeding our rank, our class, our value, our position within ourselves, within those that are immediately around us, the ones we love and care about most, and within our greater tribes. And those all vary depending on the person, be it your work tribe, your association tribes, your church tribes, your whatever. And it's different for different things, right? Lululemon pants, it's aesthetic and feeling good about myself and feeling, getting praise and compliment and whatnot. But then we have air conditioning. Like no one's bringing their friends out to check out the new air conditioner out back, but what they want to be known as is the person who made a smart decision within themselves, within their family, within, right, that they're a provider, that they're doing the right thing, that they're making the right choice, um, that they're being smart with their time, their money, and the energy that they expel doing it. Employees, what are we trying to, the very first person that we need to own the brand is the employee because they're the ones that are going to either stand for the brand or not. Do you want your brand standing in the middle of the schoolyard facing the big bully and having someone backing you up, or do you want to lose, right? Because no one's there that's got your back. Well, when your employees got your back, your brand is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well said.
100%. 100%. Ryan, tell the people how they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at ryanchute.com. You can find me at wizardofads.services, which is my essential services site. You can find me at wizardofads.com, which is our course site. And then you can find me on socials at Wizard Ryan Chute.
Awesome. And we'll have links to all that in the notes. Ryan, your time, your insight, your approach, invaluable. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to have a chance to chat with you.
Thank you.
That's it.
And we're clear. Ryan,
All
you're
right, that was
great.
awesome.
This was perfect.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely what we were hoping for. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute treat. I really enjoyed the conversation. It's nice to chat with like-minded individuals.
Absolutely.
No,
Well, now we got to get Michael back over there because I think it's time for a refresher.
Absolutely. No, you were penciled in on our schedule. We were both talking about it coming on. We were like, yeah, we're looking forward to this because like I said, I mean that sincerely. It was when I talk about writing, I was looking for the book up on my shelf over there. And, but it was fundamental in how I approach storytelling in that. And I remember that moment, he read that out loud about the mountain climbing and the Rolex and all this stuff. And I was like, moment. Yeah. And there's our process, Razor Branding. It's kind of a brand assessment. We do the who, what, why, when, and where kind of thing. And it goes really big from research down to the focus part, which is the brand promise. And there's a moment in there where we tell the brand story for them. And it's always, if it works, and it has been, luckily, knock on wood, a lot in the past few years, but there's a moment where we tell this story, and there's always a moment of like silence after, where you can almost see them getting emotional about it because they've never seen their brand that way. They've never seen it talked about in that way from the eyes of the consumer. And it's a magical moment. And it's kind of the same template that I follow every time, but it always works. It's like always works. It starts from looking at it from the eyes of them looking at themselves, and they're like, oh my God, I never saw us that way. I'm like, that's who you are. You just have never told the story the right way, you know?
For sure. Yeah. That's it. And it takes somebody from outside the bottle to read the label, you know. It is really challenging to see what we see outside, because they're just wrapped up in the weeds of it and the nuts and bolts of it. It's all very distracting, and being able to be powerful in the storytelling. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Ryan,
me too.
you're great. Thank
Hopefully
you.
we'll run into you at some point.
That'd be wonderful. Don't forget to use alumni. That's the discount code. If you ever go to a class, you are alumni, so you absolutely have every right to use it. And
Awesome.
enjoy the class. And remember, when one person goes, you both go. And because it's a shared room, it's no extra charge to have both of you there.
Awesome. Yeah, I need to get on the list of courses again because it's time to go back.
Yeah. Yeah, those three that I mentioned, those are the three gems. There's lots of other really great classes. I'm going to a class with Ryan Dice in August that is about AI and advertising. So
Nice.
he's kind of introducing that big concept to us as a group, but it's a public class for everyone.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Ryan, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
A treat. Take care.
We'll see you again
Talk
soon.
soon. Bye.
When the day